If we were to describe it using one word, we would say the current situation in China is fragile. But don't take our word for it. Come along. The economic data obtained from China in the past few months has painted a gloomy picture of catastrophe for the Chinese people. The centerpiece of China's economy for decades, their manufacturing base, is currently hemorrhaging, while their trillion-dollar housing market has continued to collapse, leaving investors to count their investments as bad financial decisions. More businesses have continued to borrow while investing at a very reduced pace. Unemployment among Chinese youths has skyrocketed so much that Beijing decided to stop releasing the data earlier this year. Recently, the Chinese yen fell to its lowest level in 16 years, forcing the People's Bank of China to make its biggest defense of the currency ever by setting a much higher rate to the dollar, more than the estimated market value. Chinese households are steadily losing confidence in their economy and have turned to saving more and spending less, according to consumer behavior data released in the third quarter of 2022. So, we are forced to ask, what exactly is happening in the world's second-largest economy? From 2000 to 2019, right until the novel coronavirus pandemic hit globally, the American economy rose by an average of 2% yearly. In other words, the American economy is living up to the expected growth for the past 2 decades. However, the story of the economy just behind America is somewhat different. The Chinese economy expanded by an average of 9% yearly from 2000 to 2009, an incredible run that only a country like China can pull off consistently. However, that was all there was to it, as China's story has taken a different trajectory since then. To put this in perspective, China's economy in March 2022 was approximately 77% of America's. But today, it's about 68%, representing a more than 10% decline in just 1 year, with the possibility of dropping even more as we progress into 2024, thanks to the medley of challenges facing the Chinese economy. Truly, what began as an anemic growth is rapidly becoming a full implosion that may run China to the ground. The crumbling property market. The biggest drama hanging around China's economy right now is the depressed real estate market. Home prices are nosediving badly, developers are defaulting on their promises, and people are angrier than before. Despite Beijing's efforts to stabilize the sector, including cutting interest rates and ensuring builders get easy access to financing, the situation has continued to worsen, and nothing seems capable of turning the tides in favor of the economy yet. For years, Chinese developers followed the simple business model of selling apartments before they were completed. This model was introduced in 1994 to regulate the surging countrywide housing demand thanks to the rapid period of urbanization China entered into after adopting certain market-oriented reforms. Money gotten from these sales funded their extremely fast expansion, with several real estate moguls rapidly becoming some of the wealthiest people in the country. Sadly, the bubble burst. The strategy that had worked for more than 20 years suddenly turned against them about 3 years ago when the Chinese government began to worry about the risk of financial instability and decided to crack down on excessive borrowing by the real estate industry. Beyond worrying about financial instability, the Chinese government also wanted to control the soaring prices of properties and mitigate against the risks associated with rocketing debt. Unfortunately, the decision created a massive upset in the housing market and left several top guns scrambling for safety nets. Evergrande, one of the biggest developers in China, is suffering a cash crunch and defaulted on its obligations to debt holders in December 2021, consequently triggering a wider crisis in the sector. The situation continues to worsen for Evergrande as its founder and chairman, Su Jian, reportedly got detained by authorities recently on suspicion of crimes. And this has sent chills down the spines of investors who still had tiny hopes that the company would bounce back and make peace with its creditors soon. A similar story is emerging from Zongrong Trust, an asset management group managing about $87 billion worth of funds for wealthy individuals and corporate clients. Like Evergrande, Zongrong has also failed to repay several investment products to at least 4 companies, totaling up to $19 million, leading to a protest from angry demonstrators outside the office of the trust company. The pool of local government debt. Local government debt is another major concern and contributor to the collapse of China's economy. Thanks to a sharp drop in land sale revenue because of the poorly performing property market, local government debts have also soared largely, reflecting not just the property slump this time, but also the impact of the cost of imposing pandemic lockdowns. This severe fiscal stress at local levels poses great risk to Chinese banks, and, more importantly, squeezes the government's ability to expand public services and incentivize company-wide growth to boost the economy. Many economists believe China has become too indebted to pump up the economy like it did 15 years ago when a similar economic landslide hit the country during the global financial crisis. Back then, in 2008, Chinese leaders rolled out a $586 billion fiscal package to cushion the effects of the global crisis. Today, the Chinese government has refrained from making major moves apart from the steady incremental drip of measures, including cutting interest rates to help consumer businesses and the property market. And this hasn't been precisely effective to move the needle as expected. However, on the flip side, the 2008 measures, although very beneficial at that time, led to a massive increase in local government debt and unprecedented credit expansion. Two of the major crises the Chinese economy is struggling to recover from at the moment, and forming the basis of the collapse we may soon be experiencing. So, this is the problem. Chinese policymakers have the solution in their traditional policy playbook that could help sustain the crumbling economy. However, implementing these measures might lead to a further rise in debt levels that could come back to bite them. So, where exactly does China go from here? The rapidly declining demography. Beyond the pool of indebtedness and crashing property market, China faces a more long-term challenge: the population crisis. At the start of the century, China's census showed a fertility rate of only 1.22 children per woman, which was predicted to be replaced by 2.1 as we proceed into the century. Remember that at this time, China was already on the one-child policy, a measure implemented to curb the soaring population. However, with the data in 2000, the logical thing to do was to abolish this policy and provide more land for urbanization. Sadly, China took a completely different approach, and the result is what we see today. The average number of babies a woman in China could have over her lifetime nosedived to a record low of 1.09 in 2022 from 1.30 in 2020, just before the novel pandemic. This data reveals that China's fertility rate is now lower than Japan's, a country also grappling with the ripple effect of a collapsing economy, with its aging society being one of the significant causes of its predicted woes. The most recent data from the National Health Commission shows that China's population has begun to shrink in 2022 for the first time in 6 decades. And this itself is a significant challenge for the country's economic growth potential. A reduced population signals a decline in labor supply, while the cost implications on healthcare and social spending would continue to increase, leading to a higher debt burden and wider fiscal deficit. More and more people are attaining retirement age, and only a few people, compared to those retiring, are entering the Chinese workforce. This small and continuously shrinking workforce is also eroding domestic savings and declining investment in the country. And from the bigger picture, the workforce will continue to shrink until maybe the Chinese government implements certain measures, including easing immigration restrictions for skilled workers to join the Chinese workforce. The crumbling property markets, local indebtedness, and massive demographic decline are the 3 headline reasons China's economy has continued to border the brink of collapsing, an occurrence that would undoubtedly have a ripple effect globally thanks to the immense power the Chinese economy wields. But the bigger problem lies in the fact that the Chinese government, apart from being strong-headed, is very good at covering up small problems. Unfortunately, these supposedly small problems pile up into much bigger problems that can no longer be ignored, and a perfect example is what we're seeing at the moment. For years, and even up until recently, the government had published untrue population data covering the population crisis that the country is battling. But today, the problem has grown bigger than its cover, contributing to bigger issues. So, yes, China's economic miracle is over. What has been happening in the past months is a clear testimony of the deeper uneasiness its economy currently experiences, a situation that will require structured economic changes, Otherwise, the weakening currency, price fall, and overall financial stress in the residential housing sector might just be the beginning of a more significant crisis about to befall the second biggest economy in the world. Beyond China, the world is undoubtedly in a state of recession, with several other top economies suffering almost the same crisis as China. So don't hesitate to check out the video on your screen where we detailed the various ways to use the 2024 recession to make money, just as most of the top guys did during the 2008 global financial crisis. See you there.